our perspective as well as community.
Well, again, I want to thank you for having this discussion. It's been one that has been difficult for us because sometimes laws sound good, and we don't think very much about them in terms of what the impact. And I go back to even the Rockefeller Drug Laws, you know, which was passed 40 years ago, and everyone thought it must be good because there was concern about drugs on the streets and in our homes and all that. The same thing with the gun law. I mean, we haven't really thought that much about it in terms of what its impact might be on communities of color, because we're all dealing with this problem of large numbers of our young people being killed by guns. And so when somebody came up with the idea that we should have a gun law, and most of the people that I know of said, this has got to be good. So we haven't been in a practice of analyzing legislation in the past to see whether it really is good for us. So I think we have to start thinking about whether something is effective. You know, what is it designed to do? If it's designed, is it really designed to get rid of guns and to protect us? Then I think about historically, all of the gun laws have racist roots to all of them. And especially after Nat Turner's rebellion, this country became absolutely scared to death of black males with guns. And we've always used gun legislation to try to remove the guns from black people, but make sure that whites maintain the guns that they have.
Remember, Dr. Green said that, I didn't.
It certainly is. That's what it's designed to do. Some parts of this legislation makes it very obvious that you want to make sure that people who have conviction records and all of that are not the ones who are going to be able to have guns. They're not the disparity that's a part of all of this. We will see very clearly in a short period of time. One of the things that we do at the Center for Law and Justice is really to look at legislation, analyze it, and talk to the community about what the possibilities are for this legislation affecting us and how it's going to affect us. In the past year, we've done, and you can get this on my website, which is something, Center for Law and Justice, I never remember that. But what we did, and I think there was a mention that things are really different up here in Albany than people think it is. There's growing incarceration and sentencing, other kinds of sentencing for drugs involvement. And what we did to try to get people to start thinking about this is to show what the disparity really looks like. And so we did these reports that looked at the disproportionate impact of the criminal justice system on people of color in the capital region. We looked at another one on the disproportionate impact on juveniles, and they're basically the same, as you probably guessed, that increasing numbers of people in our areas are getting sentencing for drugs when the rest of the state seemingly is reducing its prosecution of drugs. We're starting to use the federal legislation, RICO, and state legislation to make sure that we continue the war on drugs and also the war against black males particularly. And this report we just looked at 4 sweeps that have just been taken in Albany and found that there were 50 young people who were given 617 years for nonviolent offenses under the RICO statutes. And this just gives you some idea of what can happen when we don't look at legislation and understand its impact. So one of the recommendations that we made out of these 3 studies was to have impact statements attached to all legislation, especially legislation dealing with criminal justice. We need to look at what that is going to mean for our communities. Because if we don't, we're going to be in the same boat that we're in when Rockefeller Drug Laws were passed. And it's going to disproportionately affect us and cause all kinds of problems in our communities and actually throw away another generation of our young people. So we're asking for those impact statements. The other thing we're asking for is that the governor appoint a Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission to really study the impact of mass incarceration and all of these laws that are now being put into place on people of color. And we have a petition going, if you've been on the mall. Hopefully you will sign it. And we're going to be able to, if we get enough people, we're going to be able to go to the governor and say, look, this is really important. We haven't gotten rid of mass incarceration as some of late are telling us, but it's really taking a toll on our communities. So we would really love your support, but we do have to think about each piece of legislation in terms of what its impact is going to be on us.
Beautiful, thank you. We've got one more issue that we're going to bring here, and then we want some feedback from the audience in terms of where we should go from here. So, and we want our assemblyman to respond when you've heard enough. When you've heard enough, don't leave before you speak. You want to respond now? You ready? Okay. This is I think the latest, one of the newest assembly members of the New York State Legislature.
It's good to be considered a baby. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I remember my second day on the job at the Capitol, and there was a bill that was pushed before me. It was the New York State Act. And
now you see how it really works.
We literally had, what, like a day, two?
1 day.
To review the bill.
You were told one day and the next day we voted.
And like the two comments that were made prior to me speaking, there's still folks who are advocating for or against it. But more importantly, we're still seeing NRA folks, Tea Party folks, who understand that the fight is not ended. Just because you pass the legislation doesn't mean that they can't amend it. They can't chip away at it, one portion at a time. That's applicable to us as it relates to the transparency of guns and how they're sold from one person to another, how background checks are done. So they understand that they can still chip away at this. And then all we're left with is mandatory minimums. And as a result, we have nothing but a parallel of what we've seen in the Rockefeller Drug Laws. So understand that, there